The Game Boy Advance was much more than a machine for playing older games on the go. Its library was filled with original experiences, ambitious adaptations, and hidden gems that pushed the handheld far beyond what people expected. Even today, plenty of these games remain surprisingly fun and impressive. So in this video, we are going back to the GBA for 11 incredible games that barely get talked about anymore, but absolutely deserve another chance. Few GBA fighting games capture the fast-paced chaos of Dragon Ball Z as well as Supersonic Warriors. Instead of going for complicated mechanics, it keeps the controls simple and puts the focus on speed, flashy attacks, and aerial battles that actually feel like the anime. Combat revolves around light and heavy attacks, energy charging, special moves, and straightforward combos that are easy to pull off. Most fights take place in the air, with characters flying around the screen, trading attacks, and launching powerful energy blasts at each other. It gives the battles a surprisingly authentic Dragon Ball feel for a handheld game. There's also plenty of content to keep you busy, including story, Z-Battle, challenge, and training modes. Story mode is especially interesting because it explores alternate scenarios and what-if situations that longtime fans will appreciate. Z-Battle adds more variety with solo and team fights, allowing you to experiment with different characters and combinations. The presentation is another impressive part of the game. Character sprites are detailed, animations are smooth, and special attacks are packed with colorful effects that look surprisingly good on the GBA's hardware. The backgrounds are simpler, but they stay out of the way and keep the action easy to follow. The combat even includes mechanics like a pressure gauge and energy management, adding some extra strategy without making the game difficult to learn. It may not have the depth of a console fighting game, but as a portable Dragon Ball experience, Supersonic Warriors gets the important things right: fast combat, flashy attacks, plenty of content, and that unmistakable anime energy. Some licensed games feel like they were made simply to cash in on a popular character, but Astro Boy Omega Factor is the complete opposite. Developed by Treasure and Hitmaker, it's an incredibly polished action game that combines fast-paced shooting and classic side-scrolling platforming into one surprisingly deep adventure. You play as Astro Boy, using his rockets, machine guns, powerful punches, and signature abilities to fight through armies of robots and other enemies. The combat is fast and fluid, with Astro constantly moving across the screen, chaining attacks together, flying through the air, and unleashing powerful special moves. It feels much more like a proper treasure action game than a typical licensed handheld title. One of the most interesting mechanics is the Omega Factor itself. As you meet characters and complete certain events, you unlock new abilities and gradually improve Astro's capabilities. This progression system gives the adventure more depth than simply moving from one stage to the next, while encouraging you to explore the game's story and interact with its characters. The story is also much more ambitious than you'd expect. It brings together characters and ideas from different parts of Osamu Tezuka's universe, creating a surprisingly emotional narrative with plenty of twists along the way. And visually, this might be one of the most impressive action games on the GBA. The sprites are incredibly expressive, animations are smooth, and the screen can become packed with enemies, explosions, and effects without losing the game's sense of speed. The soundtrack is equally energetic, perfectly matching the constant action. The difficulty can become challenging, especially during later battles, but the excellent controls make learning enemy patterns and mastering Astro's abilities genuinely satisfying. Astro Boy Omega Factor is one of those rare licensed games that manages to stand completely on its own. With fantastic combat, beautiful animation, a surprisingly deep story, and Treasure's unmistakable design philosophy, it's easily one of the GBA's most overlooked action games. Bringing the chaotic arcade action of Metal Slug to a handheld shouldn't have been easy, but Metal Slug Advance manages to capture surprisingly much of what made the series so addictive. Instead of simply recreating an arcade game, it introduces its own story, following new recruits sent on what begins as a training mission before quickly turning into a full-scale battle against a dangerous enemy force. the gameplay stays true to the formula. Run, jump, shoot, rescue hostages, destroy vehicles, and survive waves of enemies attacking from every direction. The controls are responsive, and the constant movement keeps the action feeling remarkably close to the arcade games. Collectible cards also add a small progression system, giving you another reason to explore stages and replay them. Visually, this is where the game becomes especially impressive. The GBA hardware handles the large, detailed sprites surprisingly well, with smooth animations and the same exaggerated cartoon style that defines the series. Explosions, vehicles, enemies, and environmental details all look fantastic, while parallax scrolling gives the backgrounds an impressive sense of depth for a handheld. The audio also does a great job of selling the experience. The military-inspired soundtrack fits the action perfectly, while gunfire, explosions, and other sound effects have plenty of impact. Even the occasional voice clips add some extra personality. There are a few drawbacks. The campaign is relatively short, with only a handful of stages, and aggressive enemy respawns can sometimes feel frustrating. The inability to lock your weapon in place can also make certain situations unnecessarily difficult. Still, these issues don't take away from what the game accomplishes. Metal Slug Advance delivers fast action, excellent pixel art, satisfying combat, and a surprisingly faithful portable version of the arcade experience. For GBA owners, it's easily one of the system's most impressive action games. Naruto Ninja Council is one of those GBA games that has earned plenty of criticism over the years, and honestly, some of it is deserved. But calling it a completely bad game feels a little unfair. It's a very simple experience, but there are a few ideas here that make it worth revisiting. Rather than closely following the anime storyline, the game focuses almost entirely on straightforward action. You can play as Naruto or Sasuke, move through short stages, fight enemies, and eventually take on a boss. There's not much depth to the structure, but the gameplay does introduce some interesting elements along the way. Platforming is combined with elemental scrolls that help you progress, while Naruto's jutsus give combat a little more variety. Charging your attacks to unleash moves like shadow clones or fireballs is especially satisfying for a handheld game. Unfortunately, these mechanics aren't developed as much as they could have been. Jutsus are extremely powerful, enemies don't put up much resistance, and simply attacking repeatedly can get you through most encounters. The difficulty is another major weakness. Stages are incredibly short, bosses are rarely threatening, and the entire adventure can be completed surprisingly quickly. Replay value isn't much better either, since Naruto and Sasuke mostly experience the same levels, and additional unlockable characters don't significantly change how the game plays. Still, there is a certain charm to the package. The colorful visuals fit the GBA beautifully, with clean sprites and a style that captures the look of Naruto surprisingly well. And while the story doesn't closely follow the anime, the characters and presentation still give the game plenty of nostalgic appeal, especially for fans who grew up with the series. It's definitely not one of the GBA's greatest games, but Naruto Ninja Council isn't the disaster it's sometimes made out to be. It's simple, easy, and repetitive, but there's still enough charm here to make it an interesting piece of the GBA's Naruto history. Wario has always been the more chaotic side of the Mario universe, and Wario Land 4 takes that personality and turns it into one of the most creative platformers on the Game Boy Advance. Instead of simply running from left to right, the game constantly changes the way you approach each level, mixing exploration, puzzle solving, and fast-paced platforming. You play as Wario on a mission to rescue Princess Shokura after discovering a mysterious golden pyramid. Each world contains several stages, and the goal isn't just to reach the end. You have to explore the environment, collect 4 colored gems, find the key that unlocks the exit, and eventually make your way back to the starting point before time runs out. That time limit completely changes the rhythm of the game. The first part of a stage encourages careful exploration, but once you've triggered the escape sequence, everything becomes a frantic race back through areas you've already visited. Wario's abilities make this even more interesting. He can charge into enemies, ground pound, swim, climb, and transform into different forms when hit by specific hazards. Some transformations are especially important, because they allow you to reach areas that would otherwise be inaccessible. The level design is where Wario Land 4 really shines. Stages are packed with hidden rooms, collectibles, environmental puzzles, and alternate paths, while each world introduces new mechanics that keep the adventure from becoming repetitive. Visually, the game is gorgeous for the GBA. The colorful pixel art, expressive animations, and detailed environments give every stage its own personality. The soundtrack also fits Wario's strange sense of humor, shifting between energetic tracks and more unusual compositions. The time-based structure can occasionally feel stressful, especially when you're trying to find every collectible, but that pressure is also what makes the game so memorable. Wario Land 4 isn't just another Mario-style platformer. Its exploration, transformations, puzzles, and frantic escape sequences give it a personality all its own, making it one of the most inventive platformers in the GBA library. If you want to see how much personality a GBA action game can have without relying on a famous franchise, Ninja 5 is a perfect example. You play as Joe Osugi, a ninja police officer sent to stop a terrorist organization using mysterious mind-controlling masks to take over the city. The gameplay is where the game really shines. Joe is armed with a sword, throwing stars, and a grappling hook that can attach to ceilings, walls, and enemies. The grappling hook isn't just a way to move around. It's at the center of almost everything you do. You can swing across gaps, reach higher platforms, pull enemies toward you, and quickly reposition yourself during combat. Levels are built around this movement system, combining platforming, combat, and environmental puzzles. Enemies aren't simply there to be defeated, you often need to figure out how to approach them safely while using the environment to your advantage. Hostages also appear throughout the stages, adding another objective and encouraging you to explore rather than rushing straight to the exit. Combat is fast and satisfying, with Joe's sword capable of quickly cutting through enemies, while his movement abilities let you stay constantly mobile. The controls take a little practice, especially when you're learning how to use the grappling hook precisely, but once everything clicks, moving through the stages feels incredibly smooth. The presentation is also surprisingly good for the hardware. The character sprites are detailed, animations are fluid, and the environments have enough variety to keep the adventure visually interesting. The soundtrack fits the game's action-oriented style without getting in the way. What makes Ninja 5 so special is how focused its design feels. There are no unnecessary systems or complicated mechanics, just excellent movement, clever level design, and satisfying combat built around one fantastic grappling hook. It's the kind of game that makes you wonder how it ever became so overlooked, because once you start playing, Ninja 5 feels like exactly the sort of hidden GBA classic that deserves far more attention. By the time Mega Man 03 arrived on the Game Boy Advance, the series had already established its fast, challenging style, but this third entry refined almost everything that came before it. You once again take control of Zero, fighting through a futuristic world filled with dangerous machines, powerful bosses, and intense platforming sections. The combat is still built around speed and precision. Zero can use his signature Z-Saber for close-range attacks, the Buster Shot for distant enemies, and the Shield Boomerang for both defense and offense. What makes the game especially satisfying is how these weapons can be customized and upgraded, allowing you to adapt your playstyle depending on the situation. One of the biggest additions is the Cyber Elf system, which gives you different abilities and bonuses that can be equipped throughout the adventure. The game also introduces weapon customization through the EX skill system, rewarding you for defeating bosses in specific ways and giving you more options as you progress. The level design constantly tests your movement and reactions, mixing fast platforming with environmental hazards and enemies placed specifically to punish careless play. Boss battles are another highlight, with each one requiring you to learn attack patterns and make good use of Zero's abilities. Visually, the game pushes the GBA surprisingly hard. Character sprites are detailed, animations are smooth, and the environments have a strong futuristic atmosphere. Explosions, weapon effects, and boss attacks fill the screen without losing the game's crisp pixel art style. The soundtrack is equally memorable, delivering energetic rock-inspired tracks that perfectly match Zero's aggressive combat. It can be difficult, especially when you're learning unfamiliar bosses, but that challenge is a major part of the appeal. Mega Man Zero 3 combines excellent combat, deep customization, challenging level design, and fantastic presentation into one of the strongest action platformers available on the GBA. Some GBA games feel like simple remakes, but Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland does a great job of taking the foundation of an older classic and giving it a fresh coat of paint. Based on Kirby's adventure, it brings the colorful Dreamland adventure to the handheld with updated visuals, smoother animation, and plenty of Kirby charm. You play as Kirby as he travels across Dreamland after the Star Rod is stolen and the citizens are left without their dreams. The story is simple, but the gameplay is where the game really shines. Kirby can inhale enemies and either spit them back out or copy their abilities, giving you a huge variety of ways to deal with enemies and obstacles. The ability system is still the heart of the experience. You can turn Kirby into a sword fighter, throw fireballs, freeze enemies, become a wheel, shoot beams, and much more. Different abilities are useful in different situations, so experimenting with them is part of what makes each stage enjoyable. The level design also does a good job of balancing straightforward platforming with secrets and optional areas. Hidden rooms, collectibles, switches, and mini-games give you plenty of reasons to explore rather than simply rushing toward the end of a stage. But the biggest improvement is the presentation. The GBA's brighter screen and stronger hardware allow the game to look incredibly colorful. Character animations are expressive, environments are packed with detail, and Kirby himself has never looked more lively on a handheld. The soundtrack also keeps the cheerful energy of the original while sounding great on the GBA. The game is relatively easy compared to many other platformers, so players looking for a serious challenge might find it lacking. But that accessibility is also part of its charm, making it an excellent game for both newcomers and longtime Kirby fans. Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland may be a remake, but it remains one of the most polished and enjoyable platformers on the Game Boy Advance and a perfect example of how Nintendo could make an old classic feel fresh again. Contra Advance. The Alien Wars EX keeps the core of what makes Contra so addictive: fast movement, constant shooting, and barely any time to catch your breath. You're always running, jumping, and blasting through waves of enemies, while the classic run-and-gun rhythm keeps pushing you forward. The level design remains one of its biggest strengths, combining enemy patterns, explosive set pieces, platforming sections, and memorable boss fights to keep the action varied. The formula translates surprisingly well to the GBA, with responsive controls that make movement and shooting feel comfortable on a handheld. The ability to aim while moving also improves the experience in certain situations, giving you more control during hectic encounters. The difficulty has been toned down slightly compared to the original, but later stages can still become seriously intense. Visually, the game holds up well considering the hardware. Sprites are large enough to remain readable on the small screen, animations are smooth, and the overall presentation still feels unmistakably like Contra. Explosions, enemy designs, and varied environments give each stage its own personality, even though some details had to be simplified for the GBA. The pacing is another thing the game gets right. Stages keep moving with very little downtime, constantly throwing something new at you, while boss encounters provide satisfying moments that reward learning their patterns. There is one major limitation though. The screen is more zoomed in than the original, reducing how much of the battlefield you can see at once. During faster sections or when multiple enemies appear simultaneously, this smaller field of view can make certain attacks much harder to anticipate. Even with that compromise, Contra Advance, the Alien Wars EX successfully brings the series' intensity to a portable system. It may not replace the original, but it's still an excellent handheld version and one of the most action-packed shooters on the GBA. The Game Boy Advance had its fair share of fighting games, but the King of Fighters EX2 Howling Blood is one of the ones that feels much more complete than you'd expect from the hardware. With a roster of more than 20 characters, each bringing their own moves and variations, there's surprisingly a lot to explore here. The controls are simple and responsive, making special moves easy to perform without constantly fighting the handheld's controls. That makes it accessible for newcomers, while the combo system and timing mechanics give experienced players enough depth to keep improving. The biggest highlight is the 3-on-3 team system. You choose 3 fighters and take them through the story mode, facing other teams along the way. Your character choices can also influence the story path, giving the mode some extra replay value. The striker system adds another layer, allowing you to briefly call a teammate into battle for an assist. It's not a groundbreaking mechanic, but it adds variety and makes team composition more important. There's also a ranking system that evaluates your performance after each fight. Improving your rank and unlocking additional content gives you more reasons to keep playing instead of simply finishing the story and putting the cartridge away. Visually, the game is surprisingly impressive. Character sprites are detailed, animations are smooth for the hardware, and special effects like fire and energy attacks stand out nicely. Even on the GBA small screen, character expressions and movements remain easy to recognize. The audio is equally solid, with impactful sound effects and voice clips that give the fighters plenty of personality. It may not be as fluid as the console entries, but KOF EX2 Howling Blood packs a surprising amount of content and depth into the GBA, making it one of the handheld's most overlooked fighting games. When Nintendo brought Super Mario Bros. 2 to the Game Boy Advance, it could have been nothing more than a straightforward port. Instead, Super Mario Advance adds enough new content and polish to make it feel like a worthwhile handheld version of the classic. At its core, the game retains the unusual gameplay that made Super Mario Bros. 2 stand out. Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Princess Peach each have different strengths, so choosing the right character can completely change how you approach a stage. Mario is the balanced option. Luigi jumps higher but has less precise movement. Toad is fast and strong, while Peach can float through the air for a short time. The main adventure takes you through a series of colorful dreamlike worlds filled with enemies, hidden areas, keys, doors, and plenty of vegetables to pull from the ground and throw at enemies. Instead of simply stomping everything like in traditional Mario games, the combat relies heavily on picking up objects and using them against your enemies, giving the game a very different rhythm. The GBA version also introduces Yoshi Challenge, which gives you an additional reason to return after completing the main adventure. Visually, Super Mario Advance looks excellent on the handheld. The sprites are bright and expressive, the environments are colorful, and the animations have been improved for the GBA hardware. The game also features voice clips for the characters, something that was a major addition compared to the original. It's not a perfect version, the larger character sprites can sometimes make the screen feel more crowded, and the voice effects won't appeal to everyone. Still, Super Mario Advance remains a fantastic way to experience one of the strangest Mario adventures. It combines classic Nintendo level design with handheld exclusive content, making it much more than just another port. The GBA wasn't just about ports or downgraded versions, it was packed with original, creative, and fun games that still hold up today. From fast action to fighting games and unique spin-offs, this handheld proved it could deliver way more than expected. If you enjoyed the list, drop a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Now I want to know what GBA game deserves more recognition.